There's so much talk about how important the grip is and swing path is during the golf swing. Absolutely, they are really, really important. Often overlooked as a massive influence on how you swing the golf club, how well you play golf, is actually body positioning at address. So we're talking about stance, posture, alignment, and ball position. So what we're going to do today is have a look at those things and maybe have a look at how they can influence the results of the shots you hit. So if we consider the upper body to be the hub of the movement. Now when you swing the club back and through, because we're making use of a lever system, the lever system being the arms and the club, what we want is for this hub to move in a fairly centered fashion. So it'll turn back and through while you're sort of retaining posture as you go back and through. When you turn back and through, we want to turn fairly centered. Now there will be some movement with the upper body, but we want that motion to be fairly stable as you move back and through. Otherwise it will affect how your arms move, and it will certainly affect your club path and therefore your shots. So we'll look at how the upper body is placed. Now if we consider the lower body to be essentially the power source, it provides balance, it provides momentum transfer, it provides your ability to use the ground to generate movement through your body. So we'll look at these things together. We'll also look at arm positioning, because arm positioning is going to determine how the club moves. Yes, your wrists are involved as well, but arm positioning both at address, the way you position your arms, and then how they move during the swing is going to be critical. But let's have a look just at the start point. Let's start off looking at the feet. So we'll start from the ground up. So I need to have some stability. If my stance is too narrow, then when I swing back and through, I can very quickly move out of my balance center. If my feet are too far apart, it makes it difficult to move. So what's the compromise? The compromise is that when I set my feet, the distance between my heels is around about 35 centimeters or 14 inches. Now that gives me the nice balance between being too wide or being too narrow. When I set my feet are both turned out very, very slightly. If my feet are perpendicular, or worse, turned in, then when I swing back and through, I'm going to tend to slide around quite a bit with my hips. Having both feet turned out a little bit allows me the nice combination of being able to rotate freely in both directions without being restricted. So if I turned, say, my left foot out a long way, when I move through, no problem. In the backswing, I do have a problem because I've already stretched so much through the hip. So my foot placement, about 35 centimeters apart. A line across my toes should be parallel to my target line. Now my target line is the line running from my ball to my target. So when I'm setting myself up, not just my feet, but my knees, my hips, my shoulders, and my eyes are all set parallel to that target line to start. Now we can have slight variations in that depending on either personal preference, body's ability to move around, or a particular type of shot you want to play. But if we start off as our stock position of everything being parallel to the target line, we would normally call that being square when you're setting yourself up. So that's the foot placement. Now if I look at my legs, when I set my feet to the ground, if I look here, say with the club, I've got a pretty straight line from my ankle through my knee and through to my hip. Now if I turn my knee in, I now no longer have that stable position. It is going to affect how my foot sits on the ground, whereas when I move my knee out, now my foot can stay nice and flat, and I've also got good stability there so that when I move in my golf swing, I'm able to turn into my right hip nice and freely. With my left hip, again, if I have my my knee in or out, then that can affect the stability. When we look from side on as far as the knees go, my knees are flexed and the front of my knee is about over the laces of my shoes here. So I've definitely got my knees flexed, but not too much and definitely not straight. When I'm moving, I need to be able to apply some pressure to the ground. Now, if my legs are straight, I can't apply any pressure whatsoever. If my knees are too flexed, then I'm going to have difficulty retaining posture. My body will want to probably lift up a little bit. Up to the hips. When I set myself up, I'm going to tilt forward from my hips. So I'll hold the club here because it might be difficult to see my belt line. When I'm standing completely upright, my belt line is horizontal or very close to it. When I tilt forward, if I tilt forward by rounding my back, you notice how my belt line hasn't changed. This club hasn't moved. What I want to do is tilt forward from my hip joint so that when I tilt forward, you can see that the club goes as my hip tilts forward, and my belt does as well. Now, the reason that I want my hips to tilt forward is that if I don't, and I just lean forward, I'm going to get very rounded here. So if I want to keep my back reasonably flat, we have a natural curvature to our spine, so it's not going to be completely flat. But in order for my spine to sit correctly, I have to tilt forward from my hips. And that will also have an influence on how I'm going to move when I do swing the club. So my hip tilt would mean that my hips are going to be tilted down somewhere around about 20 degrees, maybe a little bit more, or maybe a little bit less. If I don't tilt enough, as I mentioned, I'll get rounded. If I tilt too much, so now my hips are tilted right down here, I can feel quite a pressure in my lower back. I don't want that pressure because I'm going to, one, it's going to hurt, and second is because it's not comfortable, I'm likely to make some adjustment and move out of that position during my swing. So my hips are tilted forward about 20 degrees and my lower back is pretty flat. All right, next step up with the back. When I tilt forward, my upper body is leaning forward somewhere between about 50 and 55 degrees. So if I set myself up here, my upper body is going to be tilted forward somewhere between about 50-55 degrees. Now, if my body is too upright, and I see this so often with a driver because of players when they're using a driver, because the shaft's longer, they'll just stand completely upright. It should almost be the case that you set yourself up, and if I'm just looking at your forward lean, whether you've got a short iron or a driver, I really can't tell the difference. In other words, you're setting up the same way. Because remember, we're trying to move the hub, which is the entire upper body, the same way during the swing. So upper body's going to be tilted forward. Now, one thing that is very rarely spoken about is the placement of the head and neck. So the neck is part of your spine. And what we want to do is we want to keep the alignment with the neck to help with the overall movement of the spine, the movement of the hub during the swing. Your head, having quite a weight, needs to be stable in order for the movement to be stable as well. Now, two things about the head. A lot of players will think about tilting their head up. So when I set myself up here, if I lift my head up, now I'm arching my neck through here. Uncomfortable, and you can probably even hear a slight change in my voice when I do that. If, on the other hand, I retract my head, so I'm exaggerating, so a lot of players will have the head low. If I retract my head now, you'll see that the alignment of my neck and my spine is much better. Now when I swing through, rather than swinging back and all of a sudden having my movement restricted, when my head's retracted, not only is my spinal alignment better, but when I swing the club, now my chin's not going to get in the way of my moving shoulder. So these things are critical as far as body postural alignment goes. Now, when I'm also tilted forward, I mentioned earlier that the front of the knee is about level with the end of the shoes. Now, with most shots, and I'll talk about what the differences are, but with most shots, if I extend that vertical line up, that line goes from the end of my laces through the front of my knee and through to the back of my shoulder. Now, when I'm hitting a driver, the front of that line might go through, it might be tiny little bit different through here. It might not be through the middle of my shoulder. It might be a little bit different just because I'm standing a little bit further from the ball. So these things are really, really important to get right. They will feel different when you first do them. Now, let's have a look at arm placement. So when I set myself up, if I rotate my hands out, my elbows are now pointed toward my hips. If I retain that alignment, so both elbows pointed toward my hips, now I rotate my hands in, so my elbows are still pointed toward my hips. They're not tucked in. I'm not twisting my arms in. I'm just allowing the elbows to rotate that way. Now if I rotate my hands, I can actually turn my hands, so now my palms are facing down, but still my elbows are pointed toward my hips. Now you'll be able to do that too. Some might have some restriction in movement, but not massively. So now from here, if I just have my hands facing each other and then place my hands on the grip, when I'm setting myself up, my left elbow is pointed towards my left hip through here, and my right elbow is pointed towards my right hip. When we look from down the line here, if you imagine a line across my forearms, it's also parallel to the line across my feet, knees, hips, and shoulders. So when I'm setting myself up, I'm not setting my arms unlevel like that. That is going to make a massive difference to swing path. Just the arm set alone. The rest of it absolutely is going to influence it, but arm set particularly. So when I'm setting myself up correctly, now I'm in a stable, balanced position, and I'm ready to go. Another thing when we're setting up from front on here is when I'm standing completely upright, my spine's vertical, my hips are level, and my shoulders are level. When I swing the golf club, because I'm swinging it around my body and I'm looking to influence the path of the club, then how I set my hips and my shoulders when we look from front on, in other words, how I'm setting my spine, is critical. So a couple of things. When I first set myself up, because my left arm is reasonably straight, my right arm's folded, and my right hand is lower on the grip, that means that my right shoulder will automatically be lower than what my left is. Because my right shoulder's a little bit lower, it will create a very slight lean with my upper body away from the target. Now, when we're looking particularly from front on, we're looking for a fairly centered motion. My spine will tilt as I'm swinging, but I don't want that to become excessive. So if I set up here and I take, say, a vertical line from my ankles, as I go up, my hips should be centered on that vertical line, not to the left or to the right. And also my shoulders should be centered on that vertical line so they're not leaning back here or leaning this way. Another reference, same type of thing, different type of reference though, is if I create a line, an angled line from up my right leg to the right side, it should go to the right side of my head. If I move this way, my head's going to cross that vertical line. If I move this way, my head's not against it. So I want to set myself up so that my right leg, right hip, and the right side of my head are all on that line there. So my upper body will be tilted very, very slightly, under 10 degrees. With your driver, it might be a little bit more than that, but don't go excessive even with the driver. I see so many players with the driver, they get these excessive side bends and then wonder why the club can't swing on the correct path. If I tilt forward towards the ball, my hips should be slightly unlevel. So my left hip is going to be a little bit higher. It's only a few degrees, might be 5 degrees at the most. I definitely don't want to go this way because that then upsets my upper body as well. So in order for my upper body to be positioned correctly, I need to have a very slight tilt with my hips this way. That will then enable my spine to lean very slightly away from the target, but comfortably so. And then I can use those checks with the alignment on my right side of my body or the vertical lines just to check that they don't become excessive. Keeping in mind the importance of all of these things, take each of the points that I've made through here and use them as a basis to check it yourself when you're practicing. Even just take either a photograph or a video of your own swing and then just systematically go through, how are my feet placed? How are my knees placed? How are my hips and my upper body placed? Am I in a position so that my upper body, that my hub can move correctly and stable so that I can move back and through and not move around too much? Are my feet and legs placed correctly so that I can use and interact with the ground correctly in my golf swing? If you found the information in this video really useful, and it is useful information, then you need to know the best way to practice it. Now, the best way to practice it is to follow the link in the description below, and I'll send you a PDF of not just the practice drills that are going to help you to embed this and help you with your golf, but also training plans that I use with the absolute best golfers that I work with. If you follow those training plans, that will maximize the benefits that you get from your practice. And if you want to have a look at my 3 favorite drills, then also click the link in the video to watch that one too. And if you use those practice drills along with the information that you've got in the book, then wow, your golfing world's open for massive improvement.